Welcome to our series called Mama Needs a Minute, where we discuss all things motherhood and well-being, because sometimes you just need a minute. This is brought to you by LunaYou, a maternal health program geared to empower women through pregnancy and after birth with our awesome partner, Neighborhood Health. During our session, feel free to leave questions, comments, or emojis in the comments. We can't wait to engage with you. Today, I'm honored to have a special guest. Sabrina Barber is a registered nurse, international board certified lactation consultant, and childbirth doula with a background in pregnancy, postpartum, and pediatric care. She is owner of Motherly Love Lactation Services and is the co-founder of Baby Bliss Feeding Collaborative of Central Florida, LLC. She is also a mother of two children, age 6 and 2, and experienced significant difficulties with feeding, which fueled her passion to obtain additional training within the lactation support realm. Her expertise serves families of babies with complex medical histories, oral dysfunction, tongue ties, and infant food allergies from Orlando, Florida to around the world. Wow. So welcome, Sabrina. That's an amazing portfolio you have there.
Thank you. Thank you. So glad to be here.
We're so excited to have you on. And so first, tell us a little bit more about yourself and about Motherly Love Lactation Services.
So I am, like I said, a mama of two. I've been a lactation consultant technically since 2018. I got my certification, but I've been supporting families with other certifications and with breastfeeding for the past 10 years. And but it wasn't until I had my little one that I realized the kind of support that is needed as far as complex feeding difficulties. So my specialty isn't just in like placing baby to the breast. It's like if there are some real issues going on, like cleft lip, cleft palate, tongue ties, things like that. And, you know, as a mama bear, you try to figure out anything you can to help your little one. So that propelled me to just really deep dive into the oral motor world. But I started Motherly Love Lactation during the pandemic, actually. Before that, I was a hospital lactation consultant. So I did inpatient and outpatient care for them. But once the pandemic hit, all of those resources kind of just went away. There was no more like support groups. There was no more in-home visits or outpatient care. And I'm like, how can I still help families? And Motherly Love was born. So I started virtuals, and then I slapped on an N95 and I went in and I did home visits, and it's been great ever since.
Oh my gosh, well, that's amazing. And you're so right. We lost so many amazing services during the pandemic. So thank you for going out and doing that still and providing those services, because I'm sure it was so needed, especially during those hard times. So why is it so important to find a community during mother's breastfeeding journey?
I think for most of us, we never saw breastfeeding happen until it was time for us to breastfeed. You know, a lot of us didn't grow up with, breastfeeding stories passed down by their grandmas or aunts or, their mothers. And if it usually was the horror stories that came with it, or, I couldn't breastfeed, or I didn't make enough milk, or it hurt. And so I think finding that community when we are in a society that doesn't have that support very well, especially for working families and things like that, it's really important to be able to have somebody to turn to and to lean on, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even when you have a newborn, you need that support, that circle of support, as we like to say with LunaYou. So yeah, that is amazing that now we have so many support groups and influencers and bloggers like yourself. So even though we don't have that in-person support, we can still find a virtual community. So I love that you're kind of doing all of this amazing work. So tell us a little bit more about this formula shortage and what's going on with, this crazy world we're living in right now. What do you suggest to moms that are maybe having, struggling with breastfeeding and can't find the formula that they need? How are you helping moms in need?
Yes, that's a really great question. I feel like it's really difficult to be a parent and to be a new parent right now. The pressure, I feel like, to breastfeed right now is so strong. The pressure to make milk is, I think, higher than ever before. And so it's really important that they have great lactation care that is caring and can listen to families, just to make sure that that we're having a good, healthy balance of milk making and mental health, and having a healthy postpartum experience. But as far as supporting families right now, I'm one of the co-founders of Baby Bliss Feeding Collaborative. And it's myself, an occupational therapist, another lactation consultant, and all we do is help babies feed all day long. So babies, toddlers, it's the best, literally the best. But with the formula shortage, it has been really difficult. We've had to get very creative. So I'll just kind of start back as to what's going on, and then what can we expect. So the formula shortage actually started when the pandemic hit. Decrease in resources, decrease in, airfare, flights to be able to get the formula over here. So we already started experiencing and seeing not as much production of formula as the start of the pandemic hit. And then back earlier this year, Abbott, which is a very large formula company, one of two only in the United States, had a recall of their formulas because a few infants were found very ill and actually passed away because of a bacteria that they found, and it traced back to certain lot numbers and formula that Abbott produces. So in the very beginning, once they found that out, they went ahead and did a recall of the lot numbers, took it off the shelves very abruptly for families. And then once FDA started investigating, they noticed that certain things weren't quite up to code in a specific factory in Sturgis, Michigan. So then they shut down the factory. And we kind of have a monopoly of formula. Abbott has a monopoly of formula. So all of a sudden, formulas weren't on shelves anymore, and families were just kind of left like, what do I do? Especially families that are recipients of WIC, Women, Infant, and Children. That resource, they are able to get very specific cans, with a certain number of ounces, and with those restrictions, plus not being able to get them on the shelves, man, I feel like they were probably hit the hardest, our WIC families. So back in May, President Biden released a statement on what they're going to do to reopen this factory and to get this formula back on the shelves. So we actually are in production mode, and we should be seeing more formula on the shelves very, very soon. What they did was they reallocated the resources. So they told factories, they said, whatever resources you have that we can use for formula, we're stopping the production of that and using it to make these formulas instead. So they did that. They started using military aircraft to go out and get formula from overseas and start bringing it to us here. And then they finally made an agreement with Abbott to FDA and Abbott finally came to an agreement on how to reopen the plant. So that started back in May, and they said it'll take about 6 to 8 weeks to see them on the shelves. So we're kind of hitting that 6 to 8 week mark now. So I'm really hoping families will start to see some formula pop up soon in their areas if they haven't already. So it's tough because during that time, we had to really help families find formula wherever they could, in a safe way, or give them options to feed their babies. And so one of the first things we had to educate families on was to not make their own recipe for formula. I don't know, were you in the mix of hearing that, of like people making their own formulas and their own recipes?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Seeing it on Pinterest and on other blogs being posted, like make your own this way and that way. And although thankfully my little one isn't on formula anymore, but not thankfully, but because my heart breaks for all my mom friends that are looking for formula and just hearing about all this craziness going on. And I had no idea it started way back then, and all of this craziness was going on within the formula world, the formula industry. So thank you for breaking that down. But definitely, I've been seeing a lot of posts about making your own formula. So I thought, well, maybe that's the thing moms are doing. I have no idea.
So a couple of things that we've seen going around is that they're trying to make their own formula because they don't have very much access to where they are, or they are weaning from formula early and replacing it with solid foods. And so sadly, especially if a baby's like 9 months, families are like, okay, well, we only have a few more months left with formula anyway. Why don't I just go ahead and start, increasing their solid food intake? And we had to really do a lot of education with families and say that's actually not safe and that's not recommended, because one, the homemade formulas don't have the protein and the calories that's needed for appropriate brain growth for an infant. And, the nutrients can become unbalanced or imbalanced. And then with starting solids or overloading on solids, again, we're giving babies fruits and vegetables, which is great, but lack the carbs, the protein, and the other vital nutrients that breast milk and formula have. So what we would advise them to do is speak to their pediatrician about an alternative formula that they can use, like a comparable one. Maybe go to the generic brand instead of using the Enfamil brand, something that's comparable in ingredients, because not all formula is created the same. So it's important to have that discussion. And I think it's also important to know that infants weren't the only ones that were impacted by this. Abbott is a really big producer of specialty formulas for pediatric patients that have G tubes and feeding tubes. So we had children, that 12, 13-year-olds that needed their tube feedings that weren't able to get that as well. So really digging deep in our resources and figuring out, okay, this company has it, or we can buy straight from the manufacturer instead of going to the stores. And what we started here at Baby Bliss was a formula trade. Kind of an underground kind of thing. So
you're a formula dealer.
Yeah, right. Rogue lactation consultant, having formula, but really it would just be, we wouldn't facilitate it. We had a basket, a bin in our office, and families that we would serve, they'd say, oh, I grabbed a new Nutramigen, which is a hypoallergenic formula, or I grabbed EleCare tube feeding, and they would just, whatever they had, they would give. And then so families would be able to exchange that. And I was like, man, like, this community is awesome. You don't hear about these like super moms on the news at all. Another thing that we had to educate families on is the option of safe human milk sharing, because it's really difficult to get donor milk if your baby isn't a NICU baby, and it has to be given by prescription, and it's expensive. So families would contact us saying, hey, I have an oversupply. I have this giant freezer full of milk. Can I help a formula feeding mom with this? And we were like, Absolutely, you can. So what we would do is we would just educate the families on the resources for safe milk sharing. Eats on Feets is a really eatsonfeets.org is a really great resource for that, just to make sure that the families connect and that they're comfortable with trading milk. But it actually gave formula fed babies the opportunity to have human milk, which is really cool. So we have, connecting families that way has been really rewarding, I think, for both parties. For formula feeding moms to say, dang, thank you for sharing your milk with me. And then milk making moms to just come out of the woodwork. I mean, all over, like, here's my milk, take it.
Oh my God. That is so amazing and so heartfelt, like heartwarming to hear that everyone is just coming together to kind of help each other. I've seen some blog posts about moms donating their milk and, providing for other moms. So I'm really glad that you're taking that step to educate, because I know some moms might be a little iffy about feeding somebody else's milk to their baby. What are some things that you educate moms on, milk sharing?
Well, we want to make sure that the person that is sharing the milk doesn't have any communicable diseases, that they are open and upfront with the family about any medications that they're taking, or if they're on any special diets. Some babies need to be dairy free, and so they have to like disclose, hey, I'm dairy free, or no, I'm not dairy free, that kind of thing. But it really is up to, it's difficult because it's not actual testing like the milk bank would do, like blood testing and things like that. So getting that initial screening and making sure that the donor is honest is really important. We also give them information on how to pasteurize their milk when they get it, just to kind of kill off any potential bacteria that's inside the human milk and it still maintain nutrients. So all of that information is on eatsonfeets.org.
That's amazing, and things that I never would have thought of. So thank you for sharing that. I'm sure other moms have those questions too, like how does this work?
Yeah. And when that initially hit, I think there was just this outpouring of lactation consultants that were like, see the benefits of human milk, see, produce more milk, see, come and relactate. And I actually had so many families that came to me saying, okay, I want to relactate. How do I get this milk production going? And while that is absolutely possible to relactate, we had to educate and say that takes time. So we need a plan right now to feed your baby today while we work on restarting your milk supply and increasing that for later on. So you don't have to use as much formula if you have that ability to produce milk.
That's a good point too. A lot of moms don't know that they can relactate. So by having amazing support and coaching through it, I mean, that's amazing. So, yeah, is there anything else you would like to share with moms that might need a little bit more support during their breastfeeding or newborn stages with their little ones?
I think it's really important, to find that community, even if it is virtually online. So you can connect with me always at motherlylove_lactation on Instagram. But it's also important to have a lactation consultant that you trust. I think there's a misconception that we only see them in the hospital or we only see them when baby is really young, but having that support through all of it, really, like teething, starting solids, weaning, like we're here for breast and bottle feeding and pumping. And when you're struggling and you're reaching out to resources and not getting the answers that are working, making sure you have a lactation consultant that you trust can be totally life-giving to your postpartum journey, because it can be a real struggle. It can be a real struggle. Your postpartum mental health is huge. And a lot of that stems from feeding difficulties. So if you find yourself in that bind, definitely reach out, because we're here to support you.
Well, thank you so much. Our conversation has been so informative. I know I've learned a lot, and I'm sure you're going to be able to, um, provide hope for other moms out there that are struggling with all these craziness that's going on. I can't believe we're finding ourselves in a formula shortage, and that moms are struggling in 2022. Can you believe it?
It's crazy. It's
I
crazy, but
know.
hopefully it'll be over soon. I also know that they're decreasing some restrictions on WIC participants, making it a little bit easier for them to like get formula on Amazon and use WIC benefits instead of having to go straight to the store and things like that. So hopefully this brings about positive change for our families. I hope.
Yes. Positive vibes, positive thoughts that everything will end up being okay. Better off this year anyway.
That's right.
So we like to play just a little fun game at the end of our conversation. So we're going to play Would You Rather?
All right.
Summer/baby edition. So I know you have little ones. Would you rather be spit up on or have an explosive diaper?
Okay. So I would say spit up before solid foods. You can take milk spit up all day long. Once we get into like chunks, diaper blowout for sure. Stick them in the tub, hose them down. Good to
The
go.
things moms get to experience.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Since we're in summertime, would you rather have a beach vacation or a lake house vacation?
Oh, beach all day. Beach, beach, beach. One, because I don't like dark water, so I am not a lake girl.
That's a good point. Never thought of it that
Dark
way.
water. Like talk about like irrational fears. That's it. No, I would say a beach vacation, but like Gulf Coast, like the clear blue water, so I can see what's coming at me.
I love that. I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It was such a pleasure speaking with you. Is there any other information you'd like to share with our community? I know you've shared so much already, but any last words?
No, I would say, listen, for all you families out there that are struggling with feeding, there are plenty of things that you're going to feel guilty about as a parent. The way you feed your baby should not be one of them. All right. So reach out for support. And I want to make sure you're validated and heard because you matter. That's it.
You're so amazing. Well, thank you so much. And hopefully we'll get to speak again.
See you soon. Thanks for having me. Bye.